Now, the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is expected to travel to the United States next week to meet US President Donald Trump.
Now, sources have told WION that the expected dates of his U.S. travel are from 12th to 14th of February. Prime Minister Modi will be the fourth leader to meet U.S. President Trump since he returned to White House for a second term. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu is currently in the U.S., while Japan's Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba is also expected to visit the White House this week. Jordan's King Abdullah will meet the U.S. President on February 11th.
Since Trump won elections in November last year, Prime Minister Modi and the US President have spoken to each other twice. The last conversation between both the leaders was on the 27th of January. During this conversation, they discussed commitment to a stronger partnership between the two countries and regional security issues in the Indo-Pacific, Middle East and Europe. Prime Minister Modi and Donald Trump also spoke about bilateral trade and defense cooperation. The latter emphasized on fair trade and increased procurement of U.S. security equipment.
The Indian Prime Minister travels to U.S. from France following his participation in the Artificial Intelligence Summit in France. The summit, scheduled for February 10th to 11th, will discuss the future of artificial intelligence, its governance, and AI's role in shaping global policies.
And for more on this, we're now being joined by Mr. Raymond E. Vickery, former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Commerce and Trade Development and Senior Associate at Center for Strategic International Studies from Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for joining us on WION World as One. Always a pleasure to have you on the show.
Well, always glad to be here. Good morning to you, and thanks for having me.
Right. So to begin with, of course, the meeting between Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Donald Trump, what, as per you, are going to be some of the key things on the agenda?
Well, I think the first item on the agenda is to reestablish the personal relationship between the Prime Minister and the President. They've been close in the past, and President Trump will want to make sure that Modi is still a fan of his. Likewise, Modi will want to know that Trump is going to treat him with respect in the way in which he did during the first term that Trump had. After that, it'll be a question of looking at the issues involving peace and prosperity, how these two great democracies can work together. On the peace angle, the security point, first item I think will be China. It is not exactly certain what President Trump wants to do with Xi, but he has talked with him, and he will want to know that Modi and India are backing him up in his efforts with China. On that score, there ought to be pretty much lockstep, but it will be important to establish that. On the situation with Ukraine, it's a bit more questionable as to what President Trump's going to want to do. And then you move on to the Middle East or Western Asia, as you'd say, and particularly what happens with Iran. As you know, President Trump has been very much hawkish in the past in that regard, whereas India has things that it needs to do with Iran. On the China question, I think Modi will want to be assured that Trump isn't moving in the direction of having what a G2 kind of a relationship. In regard to Ukraine, I think Modi will want to know that he can continue the relationship that he's had in terms of defense procurement, oil, and so forth. Turning to prosperity and the economic factors, the first issue on Trump's agenda is going to be tariffs. He seems to think that tariffs are available for everything, and be questions about energy. We hope the civil nuclear deal may be coming back, and of course the procurement of defense equipment.
And that being said, I'm sure another agenda which Trump might pick up is the immigration. We know that he has already intensified his crackdown on undocumented immigrants. We know that includes Indians as well. What kind of talks do you think would involve in that agenda?
Well, I think you're quite correct to bring that up. That's been the stock in trade both during the campaign and now, as you showed, with the defense secretary going to the border and so forth. I think on that, there isn't going to be a real problem since Prime Minister Modi and others have indicated that India is willing to take back those who are in the country illegally. Nevertheless, there are real problems in regard to H-1B visas, in regard to birthright citizenship. But generally, I think that what will happen is that Trump will want some assurances that he is on the right track and that India generally supports the proposition that people who are in the country illegally have to go home, and he'll look for a victory in that area.
All right. Well, of course, we'll be looking to at the talks and bilaterals take place in the U.S. But thank you so much for joining us on the show, Mr. Vikri, and giving your perspective.
Always a pleasure.